before, by bringing progressive issues to the forefront of American politics and by giving them a future to believe in. It is this quest for this future that lives on tonight in our revolution. It is now my honor to introduce Senator Bernie Sanders.
Let me begin by thanking all of you for coming out, and thanking Tom for the introduction, and to say right off, if you buy that tape that I did back in the 80s, it is the worst singing. Nothing but the book is better than the tape. That I will vouch for. What I want to do this evening is we're going to talk about the book, but I think, and then we'll take some questions. I think Tom has some questions that you've already asked. But before we do that, I suspect that one of or two of you have a few minor concerns about the election. Yeah. I'll say a few words about that, and then we'll get to the book. Just a few points. Please do not forget that Hillary Clinton ended up receiving 1.5 million votes more than Donald Trump. And the significance of that is we will remind Mr. Trump that he does not have a mandate to push through his reactionary agenda. And the second point that I want to make is progressives, all of us should understand that on virtually every major issue facing this country, whether it's raising the minimum wage to a living wage, whether it's pay equity for women, whether it is criminal justice reform or immigration reform, whether it's rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, whether it's guaranteeing health care to all people, whether it's making public colleges and universities tuition free. On all of those issues, the majority of the American people are with us. Don't ever forget that. Nonetheless, despite Hillary Clinton having won 1.5 million more votes, Donald Trump is the candidate who will be inaugurated. And I want to say a few words as to why I believe that happened. There are a lot of reasons why. And I begin by saying, look, there is no ifs, buts, and maybes that there is a lot of racism in this country, there's a lot of sexism, a lot of homophobia, etc. But I do not believe, and many of those folks, in fact, ended up supporting Trump. But I do believe it would be wrong to assume that those were the majority of his votes. The truth is that what Democrats have not been talking about enough is the understanding that there is an enormous amount of pain in this country. And it's a pain that is not seen on the television. Corporate media doesn't talk about it. Congress doesn't talk about it. Most people don't talk about it. The truth is, economically, we are better off today than we were 8 years ago when Bush left office. That's true. But the other truth, but that is only half the truth. Because the other truth is that for 40 years, the middle class of this country has been in decline. And if you go all over this country, you see enormous pain and confusion as to why the people on top make huge amounts of money while the middle class continues to shrink and 43 million Americans live in poverty. And one of the problems is we live in a siloized community. Many people don't know. I had the privilege of going all over this country, going to the Pine Ridge Native American Reservation, where the life expectancy The life expectancy there is equivalent to Guatemala, where unemployment is rampant, youth suicide incredibly high. I went to McDowell County in West Virginia, southern part of West Virginia. In that part of the country, white working class people are seeing a decline in their life expectancy in an ahistorical way. People today in parts of this country are dying at a younger age than their parents because of drugs and alcohol and suicide. The despair level is extraordinary. I was to Baltimore, Maryland. You got tens and tens of thousands of people hooked on heroin, and there is no treatment available for them. I've been to ghettos, inner city areas, where minority unemployment is 30 or 40%. In other words, when we look around this country, it is important to understand that the status quo is not working, that people from one end of the country to the other have contempt for the economic establishment, the political establishment, the media establishment. And one of the reasons I am now part of Democratic leadership is I intend to do everything I can, with your help, to transform the Democratic Party to a party that stands with working people, low-income people, and a party that is prepared to take on the big money interests who dominate this country. But I'm going to need your help to do that. The idea that somebody like a Donald Trump could pose as the anti-establishment candidate, could pose as the candidate of change, would be laughable if the consequences are not so dire. And what we in fact need to do as progressives is let every person in America understand that we are hearing their pain. We know that there are 28 million Americans who have no health insurance today, despite the gains of the Affordable Care Act. And many of you have high deductibles and high co-payments that keep you from going to a doctor when you should. There are thousands of people who die every year in this country because they do not go to a doctor when they should. We have millions of people trying to survive in America on $9, $10, or $11 an hour. You cannot survive on $9, $10, or $11 an hour, which is why together we are going to fight to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour. But we have got to embrace and understand the struggles of people who are living on low wages. We have got to understand that 1 out of 5 Americans today who goes to a doctor and gets a prescription is unable to fill that prescription because they don't have the money to pay for the outrageous prices the pharmaceutical industry is charging us. 1 out of 5 people cannot afford to fill the prescription their doctors prescribe, at a time when last year the 5 major drug companies made $50 billion in profit. There are elderly people here in Massachusetts and in Vermont who cut their prescription drug pills in half because they cannot afford the cost of prescription drugs. We have senior citizens, we have people with disabilities, we have disabled vets who are trying to get by on $11,000 or $12,000 a year Social Security. Nobody gets by on $11,000 or $12,000 a year Social Security. Almost half of the older workers in America, people 55 years of age and older, have zero in the bank as they enter retirement. Put yourself in the place of a 60-year-old worker, work his or her entire life, gonna retire in a few years, and you got nothing in the bank. in order to help you in your last years. People are hurting, and it is time that we recognize that reality, and it is time that you and I and the Democratic Party made it clear those are the people we are standing with. We have the guts to take on Wall Street and the insurance companies and the drug companies and the fossil fuel industry. And when we do that, when we bring millions of people together here in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, when we do that, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. All of you know that this country, from before we were a country, when the first settlers came here, this country has been struggling with all forms of discrimination. We all know the terrible things that the settlers and those who came later did to the Native American people, how they were lied to, how they were cheated, how their treaties were abrogated. Everybody here knows, and I'm in the center of what was the abolitionist movement way back when, knows what slavery and racism has done to this country. You all know that 100 years ago today, women were not running for president of the United States. Women did not have the right to vote, could not get the jobs that they wanted or the education that they wanted. Every person in this room knows that 50 years ago, 40 years ago, gay people did not have the capability of being who they were because of the intimidating fears surrounding them. In other words, we have struggled as a nation for hundreds of years to overcome all forms of discrimination. Racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, the prejudices against the Irish, the Italians, the Jews, everybody else. Those are the struggles that we waged for hundreds of years. And in many respects, we have come a long way. If we were here 30 years ago, and somebody was up here telling you that we would have elected the first African-American president and re-elected him, people would not have believed that. We have come a long way, and our task today and in the coming months is to tell Donald Trump we are not going back to a bigoted society. And I don't have to explain to anybody here the racist background of Mr. Trump, the fact that he was a leader of the so-called birther movement, which was a very clear and racist effort to undermine the legitimacy of the first African-American president in our history. I don't have to tell anybody here the slurs and the awful things he has said about Mexicans, calling them criminals and rapists. I don't have to tell anybody here his attitude toward the Muslim people, one of the largest religions in the world, and supposedly in complete violation of the Constitution. He is not going to allow Muslim people to come into this country, and obviously I cannot even give you the words. I would be embarrassed to describe his attitude toward women and the things that he has said about women. Our job, in as clear and as effective way as possible, is to bring millions of people together and to tell Mr. Trump we will resist every day any effort at racism, at sexism, at homophobia, at xenophobia. We are not going to allow millions of people to be thrown out of this country and families to be broken up. We need to stand united and fight back at every level against the bigotry that he has brought forth.